So we're using our technology to connect everyone this evening, and it's really, really exciting this evening to be here with you all in London, but connecting with Dublin, Edinburgh and New York. And a huge thanks to Slaughter and May and Oliver with us this evening for supporting us in this endeavour. And of course, in New York to Cravath, Swaine and Moore, and in Dublin to Arthur Cox, and in Edinburgh to Shepherd Wedderburn. Obviously, the nerves are getting to me with this huge audience. So all together, thanking those hosts in all those different locations, we're about 175 this evening to talk about the future of finance. And we've got some great speakers this evening, so great thanks go to Steve and Cham-Ann for being here this evening. Because we've got quite a broad audience, and some people know us and some people don't, I'm going to do a little bit of an introduction, but I should also thank, of course, our partners around the world. So the Irish ACT, who are with us in Dublin this evening, and of course the NACT, the organisation for treasurers in the US. So they've also been partnering with us. And of course in Edinburgh we've got our very own Scottish group who will be joining together tomorrow evening to have a Robbie Burns dinner, their annual dinner, annual Scottish dinner. So it's great to have everyone here. Just to note, make it really clear, this is being filmed and it will be on our website later. So it's not Chatham House rule. Anything that happens here tonight is, accessible to the public, just so that everyone's aware of that. A little bit of the ACT, do join our conversation. If you want to tweet anything tonight, it's up there for you. And if you want to look at anything later, if you want to see the recording of this evening, you're going to find it on that website that's posted. So this is just a little bit of background about myself. I think many of you in this room know me, but people elsewhere may not know me. And I'm the current Chief Executive, obviously, of the ACT, also Deputy Chair of the European Association of Corporate Treasurers and Deputy Chair of the International Group of Treasury Associations. So we collaborate with our colleagues all around the world, as you can tell this evening. And just to mention as well, a new thing that we launched 2 weeks ago is my series of podcasts, Strategic Insights. So if any of you want to pop onto the website, they're short, generally, apart from the first one, between 5 and 7 minutes long. And it's really all about personal development and insights that I've come across through my time in business and in my coaching kind of world. So do have a look and see if there's anything of interest there that you'd like to listen to. Our vision and mission, it's clear. We want to embed professionalism and integrity in the Treasury world, of course, and the vision for the world is that Treasury is working as it should, which means that economies, even as well as the organisations in them, are sustainable and don't collapse. Because if you put it down to its simplest terms, you all know as well as I, if you get your cash management, simple as that, wrong, then it can be devastating for an organisation. And we've seen many cases of that over history. So that's why we're here, and that's why our colleagues around the world are also representing treasurers in their associations. These are some of our numbers. Around the world, we tend to have 6,000 to 7,000 members and students at any one time. And you can see that there are there's a high percentage that are in the FTSE, but we also have a lot of treasurers that are members in other organisations. And interestingly, we also have a lot of people who work in financial services, as well as consultants who are our members, because they want to get closer to the treasurers, they want to understand the Treasury world. So those are also our members, just to be clear. I'm not going to run through all of this because you can see this later if you really want to pause on this. But just to say, we are the only global association, also with a royal charter, and we work in 92 countries, as you might have seen on the previous slide. Just my final slide, just to encourage people, again, I have to give this plug because it's so important to us to let people know that we're here to help them progress in their Treasury qualifications, in their understanding of Treasury. And if you have people that you'd like to have trained, don't hesitate to come and talk to us about the different formats. We have so many different things. We have qualifications, we have public trainings, we have certifications, we have e-learning, and but the whole aim is back to that mission and vision that we want to support the Treasury world and ensure that there are high standards in it. So that's me really closing off on my introduction. Again, very exciting to have everyone here. Thank you to everyone who's been supporting, including the teams in the various locations. That's really important. The events teams and the AV and everything else, and our ambassadors, particularly to each of the locations, who are going to field in any Q&A later from those locations, which is also going to be quite exciting, I think. But without further ado, I'm not going to say your full name, Steve, because it's, going to go wrong. But Steve, could I please welcome you to talk to us about finance of the future?
Thank you. I'm glad you told me that this is being videoed, so I'll be on my best behaviour here now. So welcome to the other parts who are looking at the presentation. What I'd like to do is really just give you just a little bit of context of what I'm going to be talking about. So these are sort of signposts throughout the presentation. There are challenges facing all organisations. What is impacting the roles of finance? What are the tools and techniques we should be thinking about? And the competencies and mindset. So they're sort of the four themes that will come throughout the presentation. So the first thing I just want to do is to set the scene in terms of our research. We've reached out to 5,500 professionals. These are top CFOs across the globe. And many of the organisations are blue chip organisations within this country on a multinational basis. So that's sort of footprint and getting a feel of that. In addition to that, we've reached out to 150 countries. So what I'm going to try and do now is condense literally man years of research into 20 minutes. So it's going to be pretty high level and punchy, so no doubt there'll be some questions afterwards. One thing that I've done throughout this last year is I've replayed our research to CFOs across the globe. I've actually done presentations to government ministers, sovereign funds, and indeed finance teams. I don't want to overplay what we've done, but part of my duty is actually to replay that research back. So hopefully I don't overplay my presentation today, but we have fed this back. So part of my passion is about training and education and communicating what we learn. So that's why I'm here. I'm passionate about that. So one of the things we looked at is, if we just step back a little bit in terms of the future of finance, what is driving things? And I put these into three categories to simplify them. So if you think of a Rubik cube, there are three sides. One side I'm not going to go into any detail because that's your organisation. Your organisation is going through massive changes. One thing that I've found out in all my presentation, there is not one finance community who's not going through some sort of change or transformation program. Not one throughout the world. So I'm not going to go into the details of what your organisation is doing. You know your home stretch and what's going on. But one thing I can do is actually what are the things which are underpinning the other things on a global basis. And the first thing is a demographic change that's going, so that's the second shape of the cube. And then the third bit is actually there are some common drivers of change. The first thing I want to get across is actually about if you look at change, we seem to think of it as a point of singularity. It's actually quite diffused. And if you're trying to put change into organisation, there are actually different demographics around this. So, for example, I'm a baby boomer. I'm going to stereotype here, so forgive me if I upset anybody here. You know, my sort of generation, you didn't complain about things. You understood the rules. You worked hard. You did well. Generation X, a bit similar, but then this is when technology moves in. Generation-wise, quite different. They're starting to look at lifestyle balances and not particularly looking at career as the main driver. They want to look at lifetime experiences. Gen Z is quite an interesting one, and they're probably the most entrepreneurial level of people that are coming through in terms of not only do they want to work hard, they've actually got some businesses on the side. So that's the sort of generation which is now coming into the marketplace. So when you look at change, don't think of change as just one size fits all. There is actually quite distinct ways you need to think about engaging different communities. That's one thing that's come out. Some other fundamental drivers for change which have come through. One thing which you're probably all aware of because of the audience is globalization. You work for organisations which probably have a global reach. We've even got small organisations now which have got a global reach. Again, there's not one organisation that I've lectured to or spoke to who's not thinking on a global village basis. Everybody is in that pool of globalisation. The second one is geopolitics. Now, I'm no politician. I'm not preaching politics in any shape or form. But all you need to do is to read the press that's going on in terms of the geopolitical situation that goes on that impacts businesses. So by definition, that's impacting our finance communities, whether that's the trade wars and so on and so forth. Consumerisation empowerment. This comes back to what the Generation Y people have put onto communities. I come from a position where I did not complain. They were the rules, that's the way it was. With social media, people are complaining, a younger generation. I don't have to explain that in terms of all the social media platforms which create some positive benefits. And some of the positive benefits, it's putting pressures on organisations to improve a rapid state. And for me, that's a very positive thing that we need to look at. The other part of dynamic of change is also about demographics. Don't think of that one country is the same as the next. For example, in China, with the one-child policy, which is only over the last few years has changed, the prediction there is actually that the society will probably go old before it gets overly rich. So how are you going to accommodate that? So we'll go across the China Sea to Japan. So in Japan, they're already in that place. New industries have been spawned for older people, which never existed before. If you go to Nigeria, the GDP there, half the generation is very, very young people. And what they want to engage is very, very different. So when we look at demographics across the global, it's very, very different. One commonality we do have on those changes is actually technology. So I'll do a bit of a deep dive into the technologies. So one of the messages before I move on to this slide, which I want to impart, don't think of change as one thing. Think of it as a Rubik's Cube. And once you try and get those dynamics right, then you'll be able to address and create value through your professionalism. So I now move on to some technologies. I'm not going to go through all of these in detail. Time doesn't permit. One of the things I do want to sort of do a deep dive on is artificial intelligence. I mean, today now, on cognitive abilities, I'm not talking about abilities of calculation, but cognitive abilities, we've now got artificial intelligence, which is equivalent to the human brain. Now, the scary thing about this, if you think of Moore's law, in less than 1 year, that is going to double up, and double up again, and double up again. So the level of artificial intelligence on a cognitive ability is going to overreach what our capacity is in this room. And there's some bright people in this room. So you think in a short period of time, the artificial intelligence around the corporate treasury will be trounced with artificial intelligence. And that's quite a scary moment for accountants and people in this room, I would suggest. The other thing we've got as well is the Internet of Things. I'll just dive on that. There are roughly about 4 billion people in the world at the moment. The amount of internet connectivity is probably 3 times that amount. That's probably about 12 billion. So if you think you've got a PC, you've got a phone, etc. So the level of technology and the conversation we've got about 5G, it's already here. There's more computing power than there is human beings. So the interconnectivity of things and the speed of it is going to be quite significant. In terms of artificial intelligence, I'll come back to that in a moment. I'll just give you a little demo. So all this technology is part of the commonality of change. It is going to impact all professionals including ACT. This is a research from McKinsey about technology. And if you manage people as a manager of your corporate treasury team, it is predicted 1 in 10 will lose your job. Those with people who can apply the skills, which I would say are people in this room, 1 in 5 will lose your job. I'm talking about a very global picture. I'm not talking about you specifically in your companies. This is actually a big challenge in the finance community. The professional bodies now are actually facing unprecedented change in that we've been used to growing our professional bodies year in, year out. We are now facing a precipice where actually the growth of professional bodies will stop and possibly decline. And that is quite significant. So my prediction, there's 147 professional bodies throughout the world. You'll see professional bodies merge or collapse. Why? Because there are less accountants required coming through to the business. There is one organisation which I won't name. It was in Eastern Europe, and they used to recruit 16 accountants every single year. This last year they recruited 0. So part of the engagement was, when are you going to recruit some more accountants? They said, we don't know. With all the changes that are going on with technologies and things, we really do not know where we'll need to get another accountant in. We've actually got too many accountants in right now for what we need. So this is what's going into the top CFO's brains in terms of thinking. So we are at a tipping point in the finance community. And part of the Treasury functions and professionalisms, I suspect you won't be immune to that. This is just an example which is not a theoretical case study. This is a big multinational, you can see by the numbers. So to do a financial forecast, they had literally 800 people on a global basis to do a financial forecast. That took 16,000 work days. They've now used artificial intelligence and cognitive abilities. They've got 2 people dealing with the defects. The forecast and accuracies of the artificial intelligence with that level of people is actually being better, quicker, and more accurate. And that's just on forecasting. So the machine learning that is facing us is quite a significant challenge. And I'm just picking on that as one example. There are many more we can go to. This next slide is a little bit complicated, but I'll talk you through it. The traditional area of the top CFOs is where I've marked up in red. So in terms of looking at the way finance has worked, it is about describing the financial results, which is about information. The second aspect has been about diagnostics, and that is with hindsight. I think where the Treasury Department, in my opinion, you've surpassed what the general finance community have done, and you're probably more into the amber area. Generally, finance is still in the red. So I think with some of the tools and techniques, I suspect that you can now start predicting what will happen a little bit, and actually you can prescribe with foresight what might happen with certain set of circumstances. I'm saying that as a generalisation. Whether that applies to your organisation or not, I don't know. But one thing I can say is that the finance community is probably lagging your thinking as a professional body. Where I suspect that the finance community and also treasurers is the issue about cognitive abilities, because that is going to impact all finance communities. So that's the area where we're going to. So the value of using the cognitive abilities is a difficult thing to comprehend, but that is what's going to hit us in due course. So one of the things we've looked at on our research, which I've fed back to the finance communities, is the shape of traditional finance functions, which is changing. So I came up from, if like, a hierarchical structure. You had lots of people at the bottom, then you got supervisors, managers, and moved on. That got segregated a little bit with the advent of shared services. The diamond shape now is something that we are facing in finance in general. This may or may not apply to your own organisation, which comes back to the heart of what I said before, in that large organisations now are stopping recruiting in some areas. Why? I'll take you through this. Because of the technologies, I'll go through the diagram bottom up. So to manage the processes and applying the accounting rules and techniques, you need less people because you've got the technologies to do that. The McKinsey report showed that you can take out 60 to 70%. I actually took 80% of my headcount out in this area, 80%, and I did that 10 years ago. And not only did I take 80% out of my cost base, I doubled the work they did. So think of the productivity gain which was done. That was 10 years ago. That is now becoming more mainstream. In terms of technical expertise, and this is where the management accountants come in, because of the technological capabilities, we actually need less people. And that is a big challenge for my professional body. The growth area we find is actually strategic partnership, and these are the people who have emotional intelligence skills who can actually impact what the organisation business does. The part of our research is the top CFOs have said this broad statistic, and what they are saying is only 10% of their team is fit for purpose for the future. 10%. So what does that mean for the other 90%? You can work that equation out yourself. So the top CFOs are facing some very, very significant challenges. Now, the example I showed you about the deployment of forecasting, what they did was redeployed and retrain those people, which is a very positive way of doing things. But I suspect that not all organisations will have that luxury to do that. So in terms of the emotional intelligence engagement, that is something which I think all professionals will need to up the game up. And that comes back to the heart of training and developing yourself. Funnily enough, if you're top of the tree, they don't see much change though. You still need a top CFO and a top team, but I think that might be a self-prophecy and wish, I don't know, but we'll see. So let me just go on a little bit now. I'm trying to keep to time here. I think there are three fundamental things that everybody in this room has to get their mind around. Firstly, on machine-only activities, we cannot compete as human beings. The speed, the intelligence, we cannot compete. So some of the tools and techniques that will come into your space in terms of the speed and insight and accuracy, we're going to have some difficulty. And that's true of accounting. The area which I think there is growth area for us all is about human-only activities. I'm keeping these labels pretty simple. What I'm talking about here is emotional intelligence. This is where the top CFOs are saying that only 10% get what I need. They want people who can drive value and the business change in organisations within their business. They are desperate for that. And to require that, it's not just about the numbers, it is the foresight and emotional application that you can put into that. The third bit is an interesting one. We've actually done this for the last 100 years, and this is about the human-machine hybrid activities. One of my first jobs was to actually do a net present value and internal rate of return for a calculator. I was 18 at the time. A calculator. These days, I mean, that's just on your phone for free, but it just shows you how technology has shifted. So people have always used machines, be it a calculator, a PC, and so on and so forth. The issue we've got here now is how quickly can we adopt and change to the different technologies so we're part of that human-machine hybrid activity. I'll just give you a little example here. Most people have heard of Siri and Lexi, so we'll assume this is a little bot. And we're used to saying, switch the light off, play that piece of music. Now get this, on a top CFO's desk, they can say, what is the interest rate in X and what's the swap rate on that derivative in whatever country. I'm not going to name the countries because I'll embarrass myself with this august body. But you get the drift. So the bot says today's swap interest rate and derivative is X. Then the bot says tomorrow the rate will move on a predictive basis to this. Now just stay with this in a very, very simplistic way. So the bot is not only answering the question I've asked as a top CFO, it's actually giving me the answer to the question I should have asked. Now think about the implications of that with what you do. Now somebody may think that is wacky. I'm telling you now, that technology is on some top CFO's desk right now. So in terms of actually developing your skill sets and the way we engage with machine capabilities, I suggest you keep the bot on your desk and keep it away from your CFO. I want to just pull this together quite quickly. You know, this is literally, there's been man-years research, and I'm just trying to give you the key messages, and no doubt we'll have some questions on the panels. One of the things which I like to ask audiences is I always like to give them an ask. And one of the key messages that has come through this research is about everybody in this room has to learn, unlearn, and relearn. And that cycle of learning and development is getting quicker. And if you don't keep up with that pace, you'll be at risk. So I go around here not as somebody who's going to be a doomsday guy. I'm saying, look, this is a wake-up call. Things are moving very, very quickly. And keep yourself up to date, because if not, you'll be exposed. So we need to engage with these technologies. So that speed of moving is very, very significant. Our research has been based on the finance community, and that's the roots of it. But this will impact the Treasury functions both directly and indirectly, and you know your organisational skill sets, and hopefully that provides some insights to you which you can take forward in your career. Because I want you to succeed. That's my message. But we need a wake-up call. So hopefully you've stayed awake through the presentation. Thank you.
Scary numbers, that 10%. Thank you very much. And now we've got Tram Ann coming up. So I'll just hand over to you, Tram Ann, if you'd like to give your perspective on finance of the future.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Caroline, for having me. It's a great pleasure to be with you, and hello to the one online as well. I hope that you are enjoying as much as I did with the presentation of Stephen, so I've learned a lot. So thanks a lot. It's a great pleasure for me to be here. And I'm Chaman. I'm the co-founder of CFT. We are a corporate university in digital finance. We are based in London, in Singapore, Hong Kong, and Abu Dhabi. I chose the title of Can we transform organizations without transforming people? And that's a question that we'd ask you as well to think about it, but I will give you what I think about this. I think what is important in this title for me is the people. I think that you would all agree about that employees are very important, part of any business, and even more important in finance. But we face challenge of digital transformation. The role of people is important. So let's look at how it works in practice. But first, if I may, I will introduce myself. So I'm not a technologist at all. So I will not convince you to learn about Python because you are in a bank or you are in financial services. But my background is traditional finance. I started my career as a trader, trading emerging market in New York for Standard Chartered. I then moved to London to set up the emerging market sales desk for Dresner Kleinwort Benson. And then I moved to UBS in private banking, work for ultra-high net worth clients. A few years ago, I left the banking world to venture my own. My co-founder, Nguyen Trieu, is very active in fintech. At that time, before he launched CFT, he was an MD at Citi, a fintech resident at Oxford, and founding partner of one of the largest fintech accelerator out of Asia. And I was listening to his presentations. I was talking to the chief executive of MAS, the regulator in Singapore, 2016, 12,000 people for a fintech festival. I was blown away. For me, I didn't know all the things that they were talking about at that time, blockchain, APIs, challenger banks. I didn't know about Ant Financial. And I thought for all my colleagues on the trading floor, my colleagues in wealth management, how can they learn all of this? That's why that we are today launching CFT. We've launched CFT to make sure that the millions of people in finance professionals like me are not left behind. And that all the skills, as you said, all the skills are becoming very important, the digital skills to get. So we launched 2.5 years ago, and now we are the largest platform of professionals in finance with 50,000 professionals, participants in the world, the largest online courses about AI in finance and fintech, and we work with one of the most tier 1 bank. So let me take you through how do we get organizations to transform themselves and engage their people. This was a quote from Wells Fargo who said it, and I wanted to ask you, people in Treasury, people in finance world, what do you think about this question? Stephen, Caroline, who in the room think the same? 9 in 10 Treasury executives believe digital transformation in the next 3 to 5 years will fundamentally change how they deliver services. Who thinks the same? Yes? We all agree? Things are changing, and in Treasury as well. And so we often talk about technology. As you know, we tend to hear a lot about technology and processes. And I'm sure we keep hearing it through the numbers that we see in the banks, investing massively into technology. If I have to take one example, JP Morgan, in 1 year only, spent 11 billion in technology, spending a huge amount of money on technology and on processes because it helps to scale the businesses. But what about the people? What's happening with the people? So when we ask people, what is the biggest challenge to transformation? And we talk to a lot of people, the CEOs of banks, people also in Treasury, a lot of people. What they say, what are the main challenges that face? If you look at the top 3 that comes, it's about what? It's about, we see the transformation, and it's about the people. It's the biggest challenge by far. The top 3 problems for transformation and all linked to people. It's linked to what? It links to the skills, links to the culture, the ways of working, and also the mindset. The second one, set of challenges, are linked to the organization of the business and the processes. The third one is the technology issues. And finally, curiously, the money. And in a bank, it shouldn't be the problem, but this is the smallest challenge for a bank, is about the money. So if we put, and we organize, what is the biggest challenge to transformation? For me, it's going to be about the people. And we ask, and that was a study. That was done and ask some of the leaders in the industry how to stop your job from becoming redundant. Top bankers share their tips. And people from Credit Suisse said it's about the skills. It's about upskilling. You have Claire Calmejean, the CIO of Société Générale, who said about the ways of working. and the learning, which is important, and Diana Biggs from HSBC, who said is the responsibility of the organization. So answer the question that I initially started, how can we transform organization without transforming people? Of course, it's no, we cannot. So I'll stop here, and I will ask you the questions. What are the main challenges? So you can think, and we can discuss on the Q&A. But let me give you some of the hints. I think the main challenges today is strategic leadership. Strategic leadership because we are talking to a lot of people today. And what is true is that there's a lack of strategy. Not a lot of people in the industry today have a clear strategy of where to go. What is the direction to go? What is required to achieve to get that transformation happening? A lot of noise around digital transformation, but no clear direction from the organization. So that is one thing. The second challenge, I think, it would be the management priorities. If you ask a lot of the senior leaders in one organization, what they would say is that it's not part of their time. It's not part of the priority. It's not part of the top list of the priority of some of the leaders of today. The third one is the lack of skill. And I stop here. I stop here because you are all professionals in finance. You are all, in certain leading position as well. And you have some very, very good knowledge about what you do. And you do it very, very well. We know that. But what we see in the industry is the lack of knowledge about the technology. And you said it. The lack understanding of this new world of technology. So it's all linked to the people who don't understand. And it's hard after that to take strategic decision to manage the priorities and the risk. Would you agree? We'll talk about this on the Q&A if you have any questions. And so let's go deeper. Let's go much, much deeper and look not just at the macro level of an organization, but how it works in a specific department. And I like to give a lot of examples so that it speaks to you as well. But before that, if I'll have a little bit of time, and I would like to share with you our own framework of upskilling that we use internally at CFT, working with large organizations, and how it helps large organizations today to upskill their employees. So the first one, and probably I should go through the step 1 to 3, but you've seen the steps. There are 4 stages. And the first one is awareness. 90% of professionals today they know that something is happening. They know that the finance is in disruption, but not totally sure how and what. We call that they don't know what they don't know. And the reality is that we don't want people to stay at that stage. Why? Because it's usually a stage of a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety and resistance. They are afraid, for example, that they will be replaced by robots. And so what you want to do is very, very quickly move them to the level where I know what's happening, I understand it. It's the part of the knowledge. And so the knowledge is where you want your people to be at. And you want people to get the knowledge, you want them to apply the knowledge very, very quickly to their jobs. This is the skills part. Once you've reached this stage, slowly and slowly, you will change your mindset, which is one of the main objectives of transformation, which is the change of the culture. So I think that the vast majority of people, they might be at the awareness level. But what we would love is to get them very, very quickly to the mindset level. Of course, not everybody has to be an expert. We are not saying that. We just want people to be, wherever they are in the organization, at a foundation knowledge. It's sufficient, but you want to really quickly move them to a certain stage. So I will share with you different objectives for different constituents. And for example, in terms of requirement, for example, for the C-level, what you want is very quickly get them to understand of the new business model to make better strategic decision. For managers, for example, is the knowledge part, understanding the application of technology to identify opportunities and risks in their business. And for the employee, which is very important, and that's very much education at scale, understanding the right vocabulary. You want to be in a room where you speak the same language. When people speak about AI, machine learning, deep learning, who can give me the same definition? If I have to ask you in one room, give me the definition about AI, machine learning, deep learning. Can we have a common language? Can we speak the same language altogether? That's the problem we face today. And so we want to change that. And I will share with you one example so that it speaks to you much better. This is a picture of a compliance group at UOB. So UOB is one of the main banks in Singapore that we work with. And this is led by Victor Ngo, the global head of compliance, who met with us. And he said, I'm a tech person. I want my team to lead amazing projects. But I cannot do without my people. I cannot do without my people. And so what he decided, he said, I will decide to train all my team, hundreds of compliance officers in digital finance. So he started with FinTech, our artificial intelligence in finance program, and most of them are just like me. They understand very, very well their business, but they're not geeks. They're not geeks. But they're trained to understand the basic concepts, start from the compliance team, and today, which is phenomenal, so I was there, it was in April 2019, last year, after a year, we gave certificate. And you know what was amazing? Today, they are leading. They are one of the fastest growing compliance team in the world, doing their own internal machine learning processes, identifying IML, KYC, using machine learning, which is phenomenal. And what I would love to say is that it's very interesting to see how with one leader, he has transformed all his team. And what is fascinating for me is that, so they've done, you know, the two programs, and now it's a pilot, an implementing of supervised and unsupervised learning in AML and KYC motivated team. So that's very much the who, the why we're doing this, the how, and the results. What is amazing today is that his work is now shared in a report with Deloitte, where he shared at the country level. At the country level, and now it's spreading. He's sharing how he has actually transformed his team using his now a technology that works to work with the whole UOB, his bank, but not only UOB, to every other banks in Singapore and around the world, which is for me fascinating. But you know, that was an example of one department. But what I would love to share in very nutshell, and then we can speak a little bit more about that, is that we have been working also at training, and I think this is very important, with senior leaders. Because at the moment, what's happening is that if you don't, and you know, if you don't have the buy-in from the top, from the C-level, it's going to be very, very difficult to transform the whole organization, and you know it. And so what we are doing is that we have been working with a group head of HR in collaboration with people in operation, with IT, sponsored by the CEO. And we have trained top senior leaders in one organization around the world. At what? What do they need to understand? They really need to understand the use of the technology, how it's impacting their job and the businesses to take better strategic decisions and to become a tech-led company. And this is what, you know, some of the banks are doing. Some of the banks are already starting. The tipping point has passed and is already starting. Some of them are just behind. And so what we do is that we train them, we use them a lot of digital case studies, so we travel all around the world to showcase what's happening with startup, with large scale-up startup and what's happening in that space to refer them to their own business to see what they can do and then implement it through a simulation. So it's a result of a deep dive and alignment on strategic knowledge and skills for senior leaders. I just wanted to share that with you because for me it's important. That if you want to really transform an organization without, you know, the top leaders to understand, I think it's going to be very, very hard. And so for me, you know, how to transform people, and that could be also something you could take it, if you have to take something from me today, it's important to develop skills and new skills. For me, those are technical skills. Understand technology. Understand technology, and it's not about learning how to do Python. It's not, for me, learning how to code. It's about learning how to use it. It's important. Learn to learn. Those are the skills that are important. There are new ways of working, agile, different ways of working, design thinking, new tools, which are very, very important to use now if you really want to be in this new world of finance. And I will say, and probably will share more, it's about the culture. It's about the culture. You know, I have been into finance. I have been into traditional finance. And it's about taking risk. It's about, you know, test and learn. It's about experimenting. And it's about also having very much focus on customer centricity. And one more thing, it's about understanding data. So those are the things that could create you into having a great luggage to start your journey transforming into this new world of finance. So that would be, you know, my take on that. I would just finish by saying that it's moving very, very fast. This new world of finance is incredible. I'm very optimistic. I think if I have to say, is the world of finance shrinking or actually bigger? I would say it's much, much bigger, but for those who understand it. And when I talk to CEOs of fintech startups, when I talk to some of the leading organizations in finance today who are very, very into the future of finance, they are all saying, we lack people. We lack great talent people. So I would say the upskilling part is super important, very important to retain your talent, bring them, you know, to speed so that they understand what's happening in this new world of finance. So I would say, you know, it's very encouraging. I hope that I would have, you know, helped you to trigger a declic moment for you to start your own journey transforming. If not, you have already. And I know some of the alumni of CFT are today present, and I'm very happy to have them with us. But this is very, very important. So I wish you all the best, and I would welcome, you know, any questions you may have today. Thank you.
There's a fresh one there. Okay. Right. So now it gets even more exciting because we're going to have questions from the room here in London, but also from around the world. But first of all, just once again to thank Steve and Tram for their insights there. And as Tram mentioned, of course, we've got CFT alumni in the room as well as ACT members here in London. So very welcome to all of you as well. Now, I was just struck by something you said at the end there, Tram, and I just wanted to mention is that expression which I really enjoy, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And I think it's intuitive what that means. If you don't have the right culture, your strategy, it doesn't really matter what you do with it. So very interesting point. I've already got a question that's come in from Dublin. So, and thanks again. In Dublin, we've got Kevin collating questions, and in Edinburgh, we've got Graham, and in New York, we've got Chris. So they're feeding them through, which is why I keep looking at my phone, if you're wondering. So, from Ireland, and I think this is really for you, Steve, this one. Okay. Is the biggest challenge more about multiple IT systems and the silo nature of finance teams and the skill set to connect those systems?
I think that's a great question. I could spend a lot of time answering that. You know, one of my sort of other things I look at is world-class organisations, and one of the key themes of where we need to get to is not necessarily the multiplicity of technology and the silo function. I think it's well placed of what the reality is. I think to become a world-class organisation, you need a standardisation of your systems, however you might define that. And it comes back to the cultural aspects of getting your teams embodied as part of the machine hybrid activities, so it's embedded as one. So if you keep technologies over here, you're going to have legacy systems. If you get people over here, separately to that, they're going to spend most of the time in the finance community on spreadsheets trying to make sense happen. So I think it's a great question. The answer for me is you have a standardised system where you connect culturally your people to systems in one standard process. That's my sort of take on that question. Hopefully that answers it. I'll give you an insight to it. Keep it separate, and by definition, you're going to have a problem.
So let us know, Ireland, in due course, if that's satisfied your question. But maybe we'll move to the room here in London to take any questions here next. It's very quiet. Fiona.
Yeah.
If I can ask a quick question, sorry.
Please start it off, and then the torrent will come.
Absolutely. Fiona Crisp, ex-president of the ACT. Yeah. You mentioned something that was dear to my heart, which was financial organisations, and you think the professional organisations are going to have a challenge because we're going to need fewer and fewer trained people. Yeah. Now, the ACT has always believed in education and educating people. Yeah. I actually believe that it's more important that we educate a wider group of people about Treasury so that they can apply that, rather than actually looking at the specific technical elements of it. And I'd be interested in your thoughts on that.
I think it's quite simple, actually. I agree with the statement, but I'll add some colour to that as well. I think what is occurring with technologies which are converging and melding together. You know, we can all see that in the technology in front of us. The reality is the professional silos that we've all got used to, and I'm proud of my institute as no doubt every other person is proud of your institute, and you should be. But the reality we're facing is actually it's getting diffused and blurred, and it's overlapping. So I think it's up to professionals, and professional bodies to start thinking perhaps a little bit beyond where the comfort zone is. And it comes back to the heart of the other speaker, is if we don't increase the envelope of the way we think as a professional, as an individual, or as a professional body, and that was my sort of little provocative challenge, we'll be managing decline. So for me, it is right that we start thinking about it. So for example, with my professional body, you know, we're thinking about to what degree do we move into sort of technology space, the Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, digital stuff. And I've given my colleague here a few documents around that. So we're thinking about that. I think one of the biggest challenges we have for professional bodies, just to add a layer of depth, and I'll keep quiet at that point, is one of the challenges that we've all got in this room now, and for people coming through. And we're going to use the management accountant as just a scenario, for us to train somebody up to what they exactly should need to be fit for purpose to be in that top 10% would take 6 years. And the problem is, the younger generation don't want to spend 6 years learning. So one of the core constructs for professional bodies is we'll have to keep to a core construct of training, and then that will have to be supplemented by CPD development. I'm assuming that's the same terminology used here. It's CPE in America. So you've got to continue to relearn, because professional bodies, in my opinion, can't fund all the training that you need. So I think part of it is there's some challenges there. Who do you partner with? Who do you train with? What's your core construct? And what you add to. So if I was sat in the audience, you know, if I don't mean to be provocative about it, you know, but if the ACT provides you exactly what you need, that's fine. But if it's not providing exactly what you need, go elsewhere in a positive way and get those skill sets to embody it in. My professional body cannot train all the needs that are required for the marketplace. What we can do is to give people a core construct. So I think that's a real full answer to that, hopefully.
Thanks very much, Steve. And of course, you can partner, as we do with the CFTE, for the things that you're not good at, but you can offer to your members and open up possibilities to them by partnering with other organisations who do have these specialisms. But we were just talking about young people there, and I think that's, 6 years. What we're seeing in our research and conversations we have with people, how people are changing and how they're coming to our qualifications differently. They want to learn more quickly. They want things broken down into shorter, sharper bits of learning. And you see it in the whole sense of how people communicate in social media, etc. So Traman, what are your views on that changing demographic and the way the newer generations coming into the workforce really are expecting something very different, but have this challenge, if Steve's right, that you've got to train for 6 years? Or is it only the older ones that have to train for 6 years and the younger ones are coming in ready, prepared to go? What do you think?
No, thanks very much for asking. You know, it's interesting. I think when you talk about, and I will talk about the younger generation, and we have lots of examples. I'll share by example so that it speaks to you much better. We have, in one hand, professionals that are in a huge need of upskilling and reskilling. We know that. We are facing that moment. And in fact, if I may share, and that's something very important, like government, at the governmental level, now today, they are looking at a lot of disruption taking place. The tipping point has passed in finance. We mentioned about this. It has passed. It's over. The world of finance is definitely changing, and the world needs people who understand technology. You have already, some massive changes that is happening, and you see, those. When I look at, some of the organizations that are using technology now to make things much faster, better, made user-friendly, and you are still, banks that are still doing the manual things, you can't beat those, way of doing things. And that's very important. Now you have also, so that is important, and that's why when you mentioned about collaboration, about helping us as training body to help people to very upskill, we can collaborate. What we do at CFT, if I may, is that we spend a lot of time. Why are we different? We spend a lot of time understanding the industry. I spend a lot of time with my team going everywhere around the world to meet with the people who are actually giving us use case example. People in artificial intelligence, people in RegTech, open banking. Do you know that, and it's just to that, do you know that the RegTech space, if you know Reg and Tech, so there's huge transformation happening in that space. This year, the prognostic is that there's going to be 300 startups creating just on that space, just to have case study on that. So as we have to educate those people to learn about this, because that will affect them in their own job. Some of the large organizations will be using those RegTech, and you will have no sense. You will not speak to your client if you don't understand what's happening. So that is one thing. The second thing, when you talk about generation and the youngsters that are coming to the new place, the people that are actually going to be the new one who is shaping the new world of finance. Today, if I may, and this is what we are doing with some of the largest university as well, that are, doing in the Master of Finance. And I will just share one example with one of the university that we are doing. And that was the dean, the director of the university came to us, and it's EDEC. So I don't know if you've heard about EDEC, Master of Finance, one of the top ones. He said, I cannot today, I don't have the tools and the right knowledge to educate my students about this new world of finance because I don't have the time to actually give example of what's happening in the industry. So we're collaborating. They are doing what they do very well, which is foundation of finance. And we will not say that you need, of course, very good foundation of finance knowledge. But what you need today, if you really want to keep up to speed of what the changes are happening, is to have this industry, what is happening. So what we are doing is that we are giving them the fintech knowledge with our online education, plus we give them, all of the students will have this ability to work on entrepreneurial finance. They'll have to work hands-on project, deliver a case study working with startup. That will give them this ability to work differently, adapting to the changes, learning, applying what's happening, so that when they reach to working with the treasury or the certain department in the banks or whoever they go, they have already starting some hands, some experience, some skills. The knowledge is already built up. So when you are talking about, fast learning, this is the way that we are providing. Having from the university at the master level already students who have been, I understand, I have the knowledge, but I also have the skills. And I have worked with this case study of Revolut, this case study of Onfido, this case study of Shift. This is what we want to provide to the next generation. Having them, so it's a new way of educating people, having, this ability to have good foundation knowledge, but after have this industry knowledge, start from the university. So yes, they are very, very thirsty for knowledge. They want to really learn very, very fast, and they are very agile. They use already the new tools. What they don't have is the strategic. So what we can bring as, professionals is to understand the strategy. How do you do? What are the direction? What I see is this gap today. There's a very, and I have young team here, they're all thirsty for knowledge. They've been, no background of fintech at all. They join, they know a lot more than anyone else. They accelerate their career, they're very agile, they learn, they're curious, and they know the fintech ecosystem very well. And they have no background of finance like we used to do, but they're learning as they grow. And what I want to say is that today what we are providing with the professionals, and this is what we see in large organizations with the banks that we work with, is to have that mindset, entrepreneurial mindset, having the skills, the ability to learn as they grow and apply very quickly to their job, but having that ecosystem knowledge they can apply very quickly in the organization. So there's a gap, and when you say about this problem that we face today, it's a generation problem. There's young people who are very willing to do things, agile, digital, and everything, and there are the top people who are lacking some management, strategic decision, no clear direction, no clear leadership, and this is a problem at the moment that we see.
Yeah. And it's absolutely a problem. And how do you bring those two together when you've got much more of a generational gap, potentially, than you've ever had in history, some would say.
Yes.
Now, we've got quite a few questions coming in here, but one that kind of segues on nicely from that is a question, another one from Ireland, which is about how do you reconcile this rather classically slow pace of cultural change, because we know it takes a long time to change cultures, and particularly with this generational rift almost that we might be seeing. How do you reconcile that with the extremely fast pace of technology change? And I don't know, Stephen, you might want to reflect on that a little.
Yeah, I think my take on it is, I touched on the presentation a little bit. If you look at the demographic segments, and I've given them a broad basis, and I've lectured to across the globe to lots of age groups. And actually, the learning processes for different generations are very different. And if you get that, then in terms of your information and knowledge, you get to the heart of change. So, for example, I did a presentation to a small group, and there were two people who were sort of X-generation, and they were copious, taking notes and doing things and asking questions. And there are two Y generation, and they're on the computer, they're on the phone. But fortunately, I knew beforehand that's the way they think. And I had to say to them, right, just put your PC down now, because at this point you really do need to know. And, they put the PC down and listened to what I said and opened it up. So the span of attention from the younger generation, I am generalising, but it's based on existential experience, is the span of attention is much, much smaller than somebody from an older generation. I'm not stereotyping, I think that's a sort of a big observation. So one of the things that which tussles the key educators is how do we train people from a, if you like, a traditional learning method, because that's the way they're going to learn, to something for the younger generation where we talk about micro-learning, blended, gamification, bite-sized chunks of information. People have different learning processes, and I think that's one of the challenges we're going to go through, which is part of the change culture. If you try and impart one level of training to people, it's not going to hit the mark. And that's the part of the challenge of the true educators. I just want to put one addition to that. You know, some of the universities I go to, I tend to be a little bit provocative at times. I say, why is it you're teaching people stuff which is 5-10 years out of date? And these are to chancellors, and I'm expecting them to sort of jump on me. I said, that's a very good question, Steve. And I'm thinking, yeah, it's a good question, but what's your answer? So the reality we've got, which is the conundrum we face, is we've got all this stuff moving at a pace, and our educational processes, our professional bodies are struggling to keep up with it. We are really struggling. So there is a definite generation shift on this.
We are, and just to a couple of comments from myself on that, because Tram and myself have talked particularly about our children in this context. And it's interesting, people, we all go from our own contexts. So we might say they have such a short attention span, but who's to actually say whether a short attention span is good or bad? Who's to say whether the way I do something is better than the way a younger person does it? And the neuroscientists tell us, certainly at our conference last year, Baroness Susan Greenfield told us that the front part of the brain is developing more in young people than the back. So this is why I think there's quite going to be a more significant difference in generations in the future, maybe than the past. And the front part of the brain, she described it's more kind of impulsive, reckless, etc. So when Traman, if you don't mind me saying, is watching her daughter going like this with her studies on the pad, actually Traman herself may not be taking it in that, and she would do it differently, and she would write the notes and have them, but her daughter is actually digesting it. And I think there's something about understanding different people and not going by the assumption that the way you do things is right, and then a new generation. Because at first when I was hearing all this stuff, I was worrying and I was thinking, gosh, if people have shorter attention spans, how do they ever become a treasurer? But no, they're learning in a different way. So, and we'll come back to that shortly, but first of all, Tram, Anne.
No, thanks for mentioning that, but yes, I think, you know, it's very hard to encourage professionals to learn, adults learning. It's so hard. And this is our mission. I'm telling you, we've tried 100 methodologies to help people to learn very quickly. I've tried a lot. I've invested in a lot of different ways, tools, and my team knows we spend a lot. We've learned like online learning with just one person teaching for 12 hours. Would that work? Or having people with, you know, new tools of ways to engage, you know, so that they can do. We've tried a lot, and I have to say, what works well is bite size. I mean, I can speak a lot. This is my favorite topic, but I will not tell you, you know, all the ways that the best way to engage the learner. We are very proud of ourselves to have 92%, 93% completion rate on all. This is our mission, making sure that people learn. We work with government today to work with the government in Singapore. We've been appointed by government of Hong Kong, Abu Dhabi, where we have asked to provide the content, but to help the whole of the country to upskill. So we spend a lot of time on that, and you know, Alan is here, and he's been taking some of our artificial intelligence in finance program. We spend a lot of time, you know, learning bite sides, making sure that we engage with our learner, with forum, with interaction, with lots of use case example, and I think it's working. I wouldn't say if it was not true, because it helps a lot of people. Of course, you have the attention span, but for us, you know, it helps a lot of people, and it's not easy. I think the children today learn much faster because this is their job. The job of a student is to learn, so they will learn. With anything that you give them, they will learn. Today, my daughter, they are studying, and yes, this is the way they learn. It worries me sometimes, but I say, no, please, take it off and learn through the pens and do your notes and, you know, the old way that we used to learn. And she said, no, I'm not learning my history or my philosophy like that. I'm learning like that, and it stressed me out. And I say, no, you know, you should blend it. And so I'm learning how to cope with this change as well, but it's working. I mean, she's a brilliant student, but I cannot stop her by using the new technology. She needs to embrace that, because it will be part of this new world, you know. She needs to embrace the technology, but Of course, as parents, we are responsible. It's a way to balance it, but by bringing other things, more creativity, more people skills and all of this. For for adult learners, yes, I think it's difficult. I must say it's very challenging, but I must say something that works very well. And this is something that I will share with you. I met with two persons that will always trigger for me something in my heart. And this is how we actually set it up, CFT. Otherwise, I wouldn't put all my energy putting everything to build up that university today. He said, today, if you are not learning, you are not being relevant. You will not be able to see future. And I, in Singapore, and that was Ravi Menon from the regulator in Singapore, he said, I cannot allow my people to be unemployed. I'm responsible. And the way that I want to help people, you need to start learning. I don't want you to quit your job. I just want you to learn. That is very simple. If you start doing your job, is it the responsibility of the government? Is it the responsibility of your organization? Is it your responsibility of your boss? Or it's your responsibility to start your journey, learning about something that will give you a future? It doesn't have to be with CFT, but please start. You know, you have a lot of different, and I look at Singapore because I was frustrated. I was very frustrated. I'm based in London, education is in London, and I spent my first year 90% in Asia because this is part of their culture, this fear of losing out.
Interesting. And of course, if we think about learning, people may think, gosh, I've got so much to do, my workload, and now there's something else I've got to learn. But in actual fact, looking at resilience, learning is one of the 5 pillars people describe. So if you do take on some learning, you will actually find that you'll be able to cope with the rest of your life better, because it does actually. But I'm going to move on to, we've not had a New York question yet, so I want to slip them in now.
We're getting excited now.
So this one, I think this will be one for you, Steve. So from New York, it's how can treasurers better craft a business case to support transformation? I guess that's the technological transformation within Treasury. And do you think we're currently under-invested in this space as a profession?
I think the top line sort of answers are pretty simple. I think, yes, you go through the sort of classic, I'm thinking of a CFO now, right? So just bear with me, I'm do that role play. So in terms of the way you do the business cases, then obviously you've got the techniques of net present value, internal return and the rest of it. You've got to do that. That is table stakes, right? That's table stakes. You have to do that as a minimum to even get through the door. In terms of the sort of relevance of doing that from a top CFO, what's in their mind is not just the investment case, it's actually the more, and this is the skill sets that you've got in this room, it's about the risks that you've got, and also how is that going to change the business models that they're operating in. And I think the sort of treasury function can make a fantastic change to business models if it stretches out. But there's part of a communication issue though, which comes back to the emotional intelligence bit of actually putting some persuasive arguments in your business cases to your top CFOs. Now, each business will have some unique attributes. They'll all be different. But it's actually understanding those and trying to get into the top CFO's heads of what will really make it fly. And anything to do, not with a business case, but anything to do with transformation and change and taking the business forward, that's going to get your top CFO excited. So that's the way I would pitch a sort of business case accordingly. So if you just do table stakes and keep it mathematical, you're not going to get that sort of really exciting buy-in. You've got to do a plus to it.
Absolutely. And it's interesting, there's another question coming up about how the ACT is going to deal with training in AI and Treasury of the Future. But just on that point, some of the training modules that we do now don't focus only on the technical treasury side. So our research, we carry out research every year, the business of treasury, and that shows quite clearly that people are valuing the other kinds of skills, so-called softer skills, and they're valuing more and more the importance of those, because in fact they are what differentiate you. And even, you know, as you get all your kind of AI skills together and you get, you know, technology savvy and so on, if you don't have those softer skills, unless we do end up living in a virtual world and we're not talking to people day to day, but as long as we are talking to people, those skills are really important. So we have, for instance, our vamped advanced diploma, our master's level qualification, we've got modules on negotiation techniques, how to position an argument, even where you position your option. Place number 3 is where you'll get it through. Not the first, not the second, and anything after 3 they don't listen to anyway. So there's lots of research on these things, and so we're trying to encourage people to think in that way and think of some of the softer skills which will help with your transformation. But one of the questions was about the ACT. How are we going to support AI training? Well, as I referenced earlier, we'll look to partners. We're already partnering with the CFT so that our members can take the qualifications at an advantageous rate, but also CFT kindly allowed me to access the materials for their FinTech in 8 hours qualification, and had a transcript provided, and that we've condensed to use in some of our materials for learning. And that way we can refresh every year with the CFTE rather than the ACT trying to suddenly become experts in AI and reinvent the wheel. I mean, why would you reinvent the wheel when the wheel's already pretty robust?
No,
Please.
we're very happy to be partnering with you, and I think to continue on what you were sharing, and I will give you an example. I met with someone who said to me, and she works in capital markets in one of the UK banks, I won't name the bank, and she said, of course, I will learn about technologies, it's very important, but what I would love is also to explore industry that are for me future. That are transforming, but you need some core knowledge. And I found out that she actually learned and is one of your students learning about corporate treasury, moving from capital markets and now going into corporate treasury, but not into finance, but she wants to make it to another world, but with that technology bit that she's learned, with all her knowledge about now fintech, she wants to move. So you see that transformation also. So those who have been into finance that see also that other industries in the treasury world are transforming, and she's moving it, and she's also taking some of your program. So it's not only one way, it's also on the other way. And to just add on what you say, what we talked a lot with our alumni, and for me it's about what do you really want? As professionals, you are all into your own role now. What do you really want? And what are the struggle? And what they said to me is about, I don't know how to think outside the box. I've been, in my linear career, some for them, they are entrepreneurs. And of course, it's about, developing some soft skills, collaboration, and pitching and presentation. Then some, I say that my organization will never allow me to take any risk. I don't want to take any risk, because if I take any risk, I may also put myself into a dangerous position. And I cannot suddenly run a project, where suddenly I'm putting all my stakeholder management, at risk, and myself including. I'm not going to do that. But how can I actually develop those skills about, risk-taking, entrepreneurship, how to build, how to make some strategic decision where I don't have any test and learn environment. Today in a bank, I used to be on the trading floor. Imagine how I can take a risk. I cannot even take a button, to trade. I will lose my job, And wealth management, how can I take a risk? I'm working with ultra high net worth clients. I cannot take the risk on my clients. But people would love to explore that ability to think outside the box and think disruptive. And this is something that I think today is required, is you really want to be part of this new world of finance, which is shaping. So we need builders. We need people who know how to build. And for the past couple of years, I mean, I don't know, you know, if you were coming from the back in the 80s or 20s, you were with the internet, you know, 2000, there were this new world of finance shaping with the internet. But today, I mean, people who have started, I've never had to really build things until CFT, but you know that. But I build things within my organization. But today, those are the skills I feel. And to come back, you know, with the program that we're launching, yes, I think you know, artificial intelligence is very important, and we are very proud to be working with you. And I think the world of treasury is in transformation. And you know, it's this ability to learn about the new tools of technology, but to apply it to the treasury world. And we've done, we had, you know, some students that are today, you know, learning through our program with you. And I would be very, very interesting to see, you know, how this treasury world is impacting and how technology is embracing that and how it's impacting the industry.
We've got some questions on that, but just before, I'd like to pause on when you talked about people thinking differently and becoming entrepreneurs and taking risks and so on. I'd really recommend, if anyone is interested in reading, a book by Herminia Ibarra, who's a London Business School ex-INSEAD. It's called Act Like a Leader, Think Like a Leader. And one of the proposals in the book is, you know, actually to be a good leader and to get, you know, gather thought leadership and so on. It's about going out and meeting people who are different from yourself. So not just staying in the same circles, but going out, like me coming over, having a coffee with you and talking to you in a very different world from me, and I'm learning from you, and it can spark an idea in my head to think about things a bit differently. And so, and even if it's joining a book club or, you know, joining some kind of sport of activity where you're meeting people who do things very differently from yourself and having a conversation about what they do, you can pick up all kinds of thoughts. But getting back to, because you mentioned the word treasury, and we've got, and I know neither of you sit exactly in treasury itself, but we've had a number of questions around, you know, what will treasury look like in the future, or what are the tools that will be available or should be used, or also what should we be aware of, what would be, you know, how do we differentiate? There's so many changing different technologies coming along. What if we follow the wrong ones? How should we be following the right ones? And I wondered if you'd like to talk about a bit about that, because for me, one of the most obvious things that comes to me is, you know, big data and how, as you said, Steve, earlier, you know, our brains, we can't manage the amount of data that a machine can. And if you use that discreetly within Treasury, where you want to look at trends or bring together large amounts of data and analyse, then you've got a, you know, a great advantage. Maybe, Steve, you launch off on that one?
I'll pick that up and just explore some of the things we're picking up. I'm going to simplify this a little bit. For the future, I think this will apply to Treasury professionals, and I think it will apply to all professional bodies, right? I think the first thing is, and I see it as a three-legged stool for you to succeed in the future. You're going to sit comfortably. So that's my analogy. The first thing is your core competencies of your professional skills are table stakes now. You have to have them. So whatever you do in your professional body is what you have to do. The reality that we face is that's not going to be enough. So the second part of this is technology. Now, when I talk about technology, it's not necessarily knowing all the details of the technology. The analogy I would like to use, because I worked in the car industry, is you need to learn how to drive a car. You don't need to understand all the intricacies of how it works. You just need to understand how to drive a car. So there's some inherent skills that you need to learn about driving the car. And the third stool, for me, is about the emotional intelligence bit. And your skill sets of understanding change and transformation, and that's based on what the top CFOs are feeding back to us, is people don't get it. They can't do the change. So the emotional skill sets, learning the technology, and your core construct is what's going to make you succeed in your career. I've had a fantastic career. I'm not going to go through that because I use those three pillars and it's coming to be truth. The other thing is data. You know, we talk about big data. We should also think about small data. And we don't have a flip chart, although I could draw it. But small data is actually going to give you the powerful insights. So you've got this big data pool, and small data is not a look at this massive algorithm. It's to take that bit of information in your business, take that bit of information from a governmental body, take this little bit of information in the marketplace and put that together. 3 tiny bits of small data could give you a powerful insight in the market. So most people are thinking big data, but the combination of getting the right data, small data, could actually give you some powerful insights. Anyway, that's my take on things.
Thank you very much. Sharon, did you want to add anything?
No, I like your example, and if I share, it's not my example. It's one of the AI experts for OCBC, one of the bank that is leading the world into the AI world. AI, doing a lot of implementation about using AI into their businesses. And he said something to me. He said, today, I'm not asking my people to learn how to create AI. Today, what I'm asking my people is to learn how to use AI. And he gave a very simple example. You use an AI, you know how much money, and which is the industry that has invested the most into AI? Last year, or just the past few years, it's finance. The finance industry is the industry that has invested the most into AI, $9 billion into AI just last year. And the number will keep growing and growing. And what he's saying is that it's like you're going to be using Excel, is using AI. Today, if you don't understand AI, you won't be able to do your job. I don't know what's happening in Treasury because I'm not from the Treasury world. You know more better than me, Caroline or Stephen, but I don't. What I know is that today you have the old way of doing coffee with the pounder. You have this very nice, and I could say, Nespresso machine, faster, cheaper, better user-friendly machine, but makes the same results. And this is what's happening with AI. AI will help you to do things much faster, better, user-friendly. And so you can do, as a banker, as someone in finance, your job. You will analyze much faster your data. You will do your treasury work much faster, but use how to learn it. And this is what is happening. All this investment into AI, the R&D has been done. The banks know. It's just for you to know how to use it. And this is if you are working with some of the leading organizations that are doing into and having this type of things, and in Treasury, you will know. You will be part of the future. So that's
and it will develop over time. If
and it will develop.
A different
I have
example.
to say, the past last year and this year, I'm very, very, very optimistic with Europe. I thought Europe was very complacent because my frustration being in Asia too much. I wanted to be more in Europe, and my time was in Asia, developing. And to be honest with you, I'm proud because I gave certificate to people, and it was just last year, and we are in the 4th cohort, for people who are in jobs that even exist 18 months ago, all into jobs of the future. And they are just people like us. They're not, people coming from fresh grad. They're just people traditional who made the transition. And what I'm very, very, very happy to hear and to see is that some of the European banks here are starting their digital transformation. So some of the banks are starting, and it's very, very promising. It's just about timing, that. So it's just about, having to know what are those technology. Perhaps you would say, oh, my bank is not using it. But they will. It's just a matter of being the first.
And many of them are, and I think
Exactly.
Naresh in our audience, he is pretty much a payment specialist and talks to me a lot about all the developments that are happening there. But if we even look at one example, not necessarily of AI, but of financial technology developing, look at blockchain, letters of credit. So that's something for those questions around what Treasury can use. Rather than a several-week process, to be able to do something in a matter really of hours and achieve a result that's robust. and people are moving more and more to letters of credit as trust is kind of diminishing in our global environment between various geographies. So that's one example. So, you know, what's next? There'll be many other things next. I think, John, did you have something?
Yes, I would like to ask.
Do you have a microphone so that people... John, can you just hold on because we're being live streamed, just so everyone can hear you? Thanks.
Yes, I'm John Grout, formerly from the Association of Corporate Treasurers. I'd like to ask about the diamond-shaped structure which you put up. And you said it gets narrow at the bottom. It's still relatively wide in the middle and as always, narrow at the top. But I wondered how you saw these learnings taking place in the three levels. Yeah. And how quickly and how long they last. We keep reading that people are going to have to work until they're however old. Yeah. It tends to be that the top small triangle is in, well, there are a lot of exceptions. There's quite a lot of fairly elderly people, shall we say, in the top triangle. So how long are people's careers? How do they move from tier to tier? And do they simply move out to pasture at some time?
I think there's some interesting facets for that for me in that question. I'll try and unpick them. I think the sort of diamond shape is really a representation that you need less people coming through, and we that's our research we're finding across the globe. So our core construct really is we've still got to focus on the two levels to start with, because that is our core expertise. The bulge we've got, funnily enough, is what people need, right? It's not that we've got people overloaded there, and that is going to be continual professional development or bringing specialists in to train those skill set. So for example, one fairly large UK multinational, they've now got a director of business partnering. A director of business partnering. So they have business partners. So the model is changing quite significantly around that. In terms of sort of training and development, I think we've touched on that slightly before, so I'm going to amplify that a little bit more. The biggest challenge that we find across professional bodies is, funnily enough, not the younger generation, right? It is those people between 35 and 50. That generation is actually exposed. Why? Because the technology shifts are coming in so quick. Can they keep up to speed and retrain? And it's not learning how to build a car, it's can you drive the car, right? And secondly, you've got this influx of younger people who get the sort of technology but don't understand the business. And that's where the top CFOs are sort of wrestling with. Do I retrain my existing staff, which a lot of organisations are doing. And I think that's one of the challenges on training. And I think the level of training that has to go on just accelerates. The things we are talking about today will probably be out of date in 5 years' time. It's that fast. Now, our professional body, I think I've shared this with you, Caroline. One of the things we've done with our research, for example, and I touched on it earlier in the question, is we are training as professional bodies information which is 5 years out of date. So by the time they come to the marketplace, they're already 5 years out of date. So what we've done as a professional body is we've gone through what we call an evergreen process. So we're taking our qualification and we're changing our qualification every year for the relevant elements that have changed. We're the first professional body that's done that. So in terms of keeping our core construct, that bottom bit of the triangle, I think we've got that covered. If I'm honest about my professional body, I don't think we've got the full set of skill sets. I think we're still wrestling with that. We know what the problem is. We know what the question is. We haven't quite worked out what the answer is. But the answer is it's got to be some sort of continuing professional development. And the days where you take your professional qualification and say, that's it, I'm done, they're gone. You've got to keep upskilling. I hope that's a full answer to you.
Well, thank you very much. And we've run over a little, but thank you very much. Thank you for the questions from around the world. And I hear that you're all good and you're going to be looking forward to your networking now. And we're going to look forward to our networking here. But I'd like to thank again Steve Swięto-Zaleski. Steve Swięto-Zaleski.
Stephen Swięto-Zaleski. So that's part of your test, yeah.
And Treman Nguyen. Try that one. Very much for being great guests here. And really great insights. Thanks for all the great questions. Thanks again to the 4 hosting law firms. Really very much appreciate what you're doing and for us tonight. And yeah, thanks for you all being here. And those on the ends of the line and the technology. Thank you for technology for working. Yes, and upcoming events. I think that's our final slide for anyone who wants to see what's coming up. But enjoy the rest of our time together, everyone, and do feel free to ask our panellists questions and also ask your ambassadors at your different locations. I'm sure they can answer lots of questions for you too. Take care, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.